Most people know Jewel as the crooked-toothed singer who conquered the 92nd with Who Will Save Your Soul. But few realize this Grammy-nominated superstar's connection to Alaska's most famous homesteading family runs deeper than just bloodlines. From surviving homelessness by choice to winning reality, television competitions in disguise, her journey between the entertainment world and her family's wilderness lifestyle reveals shocking secrets that even longtime fans never suspected. Here are 15 things you never knew about Jewel Kilcher from Alaska. Her homelessness was about sexual harassment. Most people think Jewel became homeless because she was chasing her dream of becoming a famous musician, but that story couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, Jewel found herself living in her car because she refused to have sex with her boss, who then punished her by withholding her paycheck when she wouldn't give in to his advances. For years, the media told a completely different version of Jewel's origin story, painting her as a determined young artist who was willing to sacrifice everything for her music career. This romanticized narrative suggested that she chose to live in her car as part of her journey to stardom, sleeping in parking lots while she performed at coffee shops and pursued record deals. But as Jewel revealed in a 2022 interview, this widely accepted version of events was actually a harmful misrepresentation of what really happened to her. The truth is that Jewel wasn't even thinking about becoming a professional musician when she ended up homeless. She was simply trying to survive and make ends meet with a regular job when her boss began pursuing her sexually. When she refused his advances and wouldn't compromise her values, he retaliated by refusing to give her the paycheck she had earned. Without that money, she couldn't afford to pay her rent, which forced her to start living in her car. The situation became even worse when her car was eventually stolen, leaving her completely homeless on the streets of San Diego. What makes this story even more troubling is that Jewel says she actually told this version of events in interviews at the time, but journalists and media outlets consistently ignored or glossed over the sexual harassment aspect of her story. Instead, they preferred to focus on the more palatable narrative about a young woman following her dreams. Looking back on that difficult period, Jewel says she's proud of her decision to stand up for herself, even though it led to such serious consequences. She refused to be leveraged or manipulated by someone in a position of power over her, and that choice ultimately shaped not just her personal values, but also her entire career trajectory. The experience taught her early on that maintaining her integrity was more important than taking shortcuts or compromising herself for money or opportunities. She almost died from kidney infection. While living homeless in San Diego, Jewel came dangerously close to dying from a severe kidney infection that left her so weak she couldn't even move from a parking lot where she had collapsed. The infection was so serious that without immediate medical intervention, she likely would not have survived much longer. During this period of her life, Jewel was already struggling with the basic necessities of survival, like finding food, shelter, and safety on a daily basis. Living without proper hygiene facilities or consistent access to clean water made her vulnerable to various health problems. But the kidney infection that developed was particularly life-threatening. Kidney infections can quickly become fatal if left untreated, especially when someone's immune system is already weakened by malnutrition and the constant stress of homelessness. The turning point came when Jewel became so ill from the infection that she literally couldn't move from where she had ended up in a parking lot. She was essentially helpless and waiting to die when a doctor happened to notice her condition. This medical professional recognized how seriously ill she was and immediately provided her with the antibiotics she desperately needed to fight off the infection. Without this chance encounter and the doctor's willingness to help a homeless person, Jewel almost certainly would have died from the untreated kidney infection. Jewel has described this experience as one of the lowest and most frightening points of her entire life. She was reduced to what she calls living like an animal. focused entirely on basic survival needs, when the infection struck and brought her even closer to death. The fact that a stranger took the time to notice her condition and provide life-saving medical care became a pivotal moment that allowed her to survive and eventually turn her life around. This near-death experience from the kidney infection happened during the same period when she was performing at local coffee shops and starting to build a small following for her music, though she wasn't yet thinking of music as a potential career path. The severity of her illness during this time shows just how precarious her situation really was and how close she came to never having the opportunity to become the successful artist she eventually became. Her mother allegedly stole over $100 million. In one of the most shocking betrayals in entertainment history, Jewel discovered that her own mother had allegedly stolen over $100 million from her career earnings, leaving the multi-platinum singer $3 million in debt by the time she was 34 years old. This devastating financial discovery completely shattered Jewel's understanding of her relationship with her mother, Lenedra Carroll, who had been serving as both her business manager and the person she trusted most in the world. Lenedra Carroll had been managing Jewel's career and finances for about 15 years, handling all the money that came in from album sales, concert tours, and various business deals during the height of Jewel's success in the 1990s and early 2000s. During this period, Jewel sold over 30 million albums worldwide and was earning massive amounts of money from her music career, so she naturally assumed that her financial situation was secure and that her mother was properly managing her wealth. The shocking truth came to light around 2003, when Jewel was in her early 30s and decided to take a closer look at her financial situation. What she discovered was that not only was all of her money completely gone, but she was actually several $million in debt, despite having generated enormous amounts of income throughout her career. As Jewel began investigating what had happened to her money, she realized that her mother had been systematically taking funds from her accounts over the course of many years. According to Jewel, this financial betrayal was accompanied by years of psychological manipulation and abuse that made it difficult for her to recognize what was happening. She has described how her mother would engage in behaviors that seemed supportive on the surface, but were actually designed to keep Jewel dependent and unaware of the true state of her finances. The discovery that her mother had allegedly embezzled such an enormous amount of money while simultaneously manipulating her emotionally was described by Jewel as an incredibly difficult psychological experience that forced her to completely reevaluate everything she thought she knew about their relationship and her own life. She refuses to fix her famous crooked teeth. Despite constant criticism from the media and countless offers from dentists to fix her teeth for free, Jewel has deliberately chosen to keep her famously crooked smile throughout her entire career, citing the surprisingly simple reason that she just doesn't like pain and never wanted to deal with braces or dental procedures. Her distinctive snaggletooth has become one of her most recognizable features, but many people don't realize that keeping it has been a conscious choice rather than something she simply couldn't afford to change. Throughout the 1990s, when Jewel first became famous, her crooked teeth were a constant topic of discussion in interviews and media coverage. Radio show hosts would regularly field calls from listeners asking about her teeth, and some dental professionals even called in during her interviews to offer free orthodontic work. The attention became so intense that her teeth were often mentioned more frequently than her actual music, which frustrated Jewel but also reinforced her decision to keep them exactly as they were. One particularly memorable incident occurred during a radio interview when a host introduced her as the snaggle-toothed singer from Alaska, prompting Jewel to fire back by calling him the small-penised man from South Carolina, which got her immediately kicked off the air and escorted out of the studio. These types of experiences showed her how much people fixated on her appearance rather than her artistic abilities, but they also demonstrated how her natural look had become an important part of her identity. Jewel has explained that when she first got her record deal, she watched other young women in the music industry getting nose jobs, breast implants, and other cosmetic procedures. Because they wanted acceptance, they weren't willing to give themselves. She realized that if she started fixing her teeth, it would likely lead to other changes, and she didn't want to go down that path of constantly altering herself to meet other people's expectations. Her decision to keep her crooked teeth actually ended up benefiting her career in unexpected ways, as it helped her land her first acting role in the film Ride with the Devil. Because the director specifically wanted someone with period-appropriate teeth who looked authentic for the time period the movie was set in, she won the Masked Singer in Disguise. In 2021, Jewel pulled off one of the most successful secret identities in reality television history when she competed on The Masked Singer as the Queen of Hearts character and won the entire 6th season of the show, managing to fool almost all of the celebrity judges until her final unmasking moment. The elaborate heart-shaped costume completely disguised her identity, allowing her to showcase her vocal abilities without any preconceived notions about who she was or what kind of music she should be performing. The Queen of Hearts costume was designed as a red polygonal heart covered in gold spikes, featuring one blue eye with 3 white tears underneath, blue lips with embedded lights, and a golden crown on top. Jewel wore a shiny red bodysuit underneath, with matching gloves and boots, and the entire outfit was so elaborate that it completely concealed her physical appearance and even required her to use a headset microphone hidden inside the mask, rather than holding a traditional microphone. Throughout the competition, Jewel performed a diverse range of songs that demonstrated her vocal versatility, including covers of Lady Gaga's Born This Way, the French classic La Vie en Rose by Edith Piaf, Bishop Briggs's River, Patsy Cline's She's Got You, and Sia's Bird Set Free. Her performances were consistently strong enough to keep her safe from elimination week after week, and she ultimately made it to the finale where she competed against Todrick Hall, who was performing as the Bull character. The show's producers included various clues throughout the season that pointed toward Jewel's identity, including references to Jewel's Wizard of Oz characters that connected to her past acting work, and Alice in Wonderland imagery that related to one of her album titles. Despite these hints, most of the celebrity panelists struggled to correctly identify her, with Ken Jeong stubbornly insisting she was Renee Zellweger right up until the final reveal. When Jewel was finally unmasked as the winner, she explained that the experience reminded her of her early days performing in coffee shops before she became famous, when people could simply react to her voice and music without knowing anything else about her background or career history. Her poetry book was widely mocked. In 1998, Jewel published a poetry collection called A Knight Without Armor that became a massive bestseller with over 1 million copies sold. But it also became the target of brutal public mockery, most notably from MTV news anchor Kurt Loder, who embarrassed her on live television by correcting her grammar and dismissing her work as amateurish. The book's commercial success couldn't protect it from becoming one of the most criticized celebrity poetry collections of the decade. The controversy reached its peak when Jewel appeared on MTV News for an interview with Kurt Loder, who had already made his disdain for the book abundantly clear in previous coverage. During the interview, Loder read aloud from one of her poems and pointed out that she had used the word casualty when she clearly meant casualness, correcting her grammar mistake on live television in front of millions of viewers. This moment became emblematic of the harsh treatment her poetry received from critics. Loder's approach to covering the book was particularly condescending, as he would introduce segments about it by telling viewers they might want to sit down before hearing what Jewel had to say about her poetry. He also made jokes about the book's title, emphasizing that Knight was spelled with an N rather than a K, which seemed to mock Jewel's play on words that referenced the 1937 film Knight Without Armor. His coverage demonstrated what many saw as a clear example of how young female artists were treated dismissively by male media figures during that era. The book's reception became so notorious that it inspired parody works, including a full-length spoof called A Knight Without Armor 2. The Revenge, which mocked the style and content of Jewel's original poems. Despite the widespread criticism, the book found a devoted audience among readers who connected with its honest, emotional content about love, loss, and personal growth. Looking back, many critics have argued that the harsh treatment of Jewel's poetry reflected broader issues with how the media handled young women in entertainment during the late 1990s, with her work being dismissed not necessarily on its literary merits, but because of preconceived notions about celebrity authors and female creativity. She got acting roles because of her teeth. Jewel's decision to keep her crooked teeth turned out to be a career advantage in an unexpected way. When acclaimed director Ang Lee cast her in her first major film role specifically because she was the only actress in Hollywood who hadn't gotten her teeth fixed, making her perfect for a period piece that required authentic-looking dental work. The 1999 Civil War drama Ride with the Devil starred Jewel alongside Tobey Maguire, and her casting came about entirely because of her natural, unaltered appearance. When Jewel auditioned for the role of Sue Lee Shelley in the film, she was curious about why Lee had chosen her over more experienced actresses who were likely competing for the same part. After she got the role, she asked the director directly why he had selected her for the film, and his answer was both surprising and revealing about the state of Hollywood beauty standards at the time. Lee explained that he needed someone who looked like they could have lived during the 1860s, and Jewel was literally the only actress he had encountered who still had what he called period teeth. This casting decision highlighted how unusual Jewel's choice to maintain her natural appearance had become in an industry where cosmetic dental work was considered standard practice for anyone hoping to have a successful career in front of the camera. By the late 1990s, it had become so common for actors and actresses to get their teeth professionally straightened and whitened that finding someone with a naturally imperfect smile for a historical film had become genuinely difficult for casting directors and filmmakers. The film received mixed reviews overall, but critics specifically praised Jewel's performance, with renowned film critic Roger Ebert writing that she deserved recognition for performing her character in a convincing and natural way without any of the mannerisms that might be expected from a musician making her acting debut. Her authentic appearance and natural acting style helped her fit seamlessly into the period setting of the film. This experience proved that Jewel's commitment to maintaining her authentic look wasn't just about personal principles, but actually opened up professional opportunities that wouldn't have been available to her if she had conformed to typical Hollywood beauty standards like most other entertainers of her generation. She survived by shoplifting while homeless. During her year of homelessness in San Diego, Jewel resorted to shoplifting clothes and other necessities to survive, but it was a specific moment when she caught sight of herself stealing a dress in a fitting room mirror that became the turning point that made her realize she needed to completely change the direction her life was heading. This moment of self-awareness, while committing theft, became one of the most pivotal experiences of her entire life, and ultimately led to her decision to turn things around. When Jewel was living on the streets without any money or resources, she found herself in the desperate situation of needing basic items like clothing, but having no way to pay for them. The reality of homelessness meant that she was constantly focused on finding food, shelter, and safety, which left little room for considering the moral implications of taking things she couldn't afford. She has openly admitted that during this period, she was essentially living like an animal, driven entirely by survival instincts rather than the values she had been raised with. The life-changing moment occurred when she was in a store fitting room, trying to shove a dress down her pants to steal it. And she looked up to see her reflection in the mirror. In that instant, she was confronted with the reality of what she had become and how far she had fallen from the person she wanted to be. The image of herself as someone who was stealing clothing was so shocking and devastating that it forced her to confront the fact that her life was spiraling completely out of control. This moment of clarity in the fitting room became what she describes as a wake-up call that made her realize she was dangerously close to a point of no return. She understood that if she continued down this path of desperation and illegal behavior, she would likely end up in jail, seriously ill, or dead. And none of those outcomes were acceptable to her. The experience motivated her to start making different choices and looking for legitimate ways to improve her situation, which eventually led to her getting regular gigs at coffee shops and beginning to build the foundation for her music career. Her family was fined for illegal bear hunting. In 2015, Jewel's family found themselves in serious legal trouble when several members of the Kilcher clan were charged and ultimately fined $17,500 for illegally hunting a black bear from a helicopter while filming an episode of Alaska: The Last Frontier, creating a major scandal that involved both the family and the production company behind the show. This incident revealed how the pressure to create dramatic television content sometimes led to violations of Alaska's strict hunting regulations. The illegal hunt took place in 2014 during the filming of the Discovery Channel series, and it involved Jewel's brother, Jewel Kilcher, along with his wife Christina Kilcher, who participated in using a helicopter to hunt down a black bear for the cameras. Alaska has very specific laws about hunting methods, and using aircraft like helicopters to pursue or kill game animals is strictly prohibited because it gives hunters an unfair advantage and goes against principles of fair chase that are fundamental to ethical hunting practices. The violation came to light when a former member of the production team tipped off Alaska State Troopers about what had happened during the filming. This whistleblower provided evidence that the family had used the helicopter not just for transportation, but actually as part of the hunting process itself, which constituted a clear violation of state hunting regulations. The fact that this illegal activity was being filmed for television made the situation even more problematic from a legal standpoint. Both Atz and Christina Kilcher were formally charged with misdemeanor violations for unlawful methods of taking game with a helicopter, and they were issued summons to appear in court rather than being arrested. The production company, Wilma Television Incorporated, which is a subsidiary of Discovery, was also charged in connection with the hunting violation, showing that the legal consequences extended beyond just the family members who participated in the actual hunt. The charges were eventually resolved through a plea agreement that resulted in the $17,500 fine being paid, but the incident highlighted the complex legal issues that can arise when reality television shows document activities like hunting in states with strict wildlife protection laws. She has Estonian country music success. In 2008, Jewel made one of the most unexpected career moves in music by completely pivoting from her folk pop roots to country music, releasing an album called Perfectly Clear that immediately shot to #1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart and proved she could successfully reinvent herself in an entirely different genre. This dramatic shift caught both fans and industry experts by surprise, as country music seemed like an unlikely fit for someone who had built her career on acoustic folk songs and alternative rock ballads. The decision to move into country music represented a major risk for Jewel, who had already established herself as a successful artist in the folk and pop worlds throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Many musicians who attempt to cross over into country music struggle to gain acceptance from country radio stations and fans, who are often skeptical of artists they perceive as outsiders, trying to capitalize on the genre's commercial success without understanding its authentic roots and traditions. However, Jewel's transition proved to be remarkably successful, with Perfectly Clear not only reaching the top of the country charts, but also spawning several hit singles, including Stronger Woman, I Do, and Till It Feels Like Cheating. The album's success demonstrated that her voice and songwriting abilities were versatile enough to work within the country music framework, and that she had managed to tap into something genuine about the genre rather than simply attempting to mimic its surface elements. The album's achievement was particularly impressive because it came at a time when Jewel's mainstream pop career had been experiencing some commercial decline, making the country crossover feel like both a creative reset and a smart business decision. Her success in country music also connected back to her Alaska roots in some ways, as the rural and outdoor lifestyle she had grown up with on the Kilcher homestead shared some cultural similarities with the themes and values that are often central to country music storytelling. Following the success of Perfectly Clear, Jewel released another country album called Sweet and Wild in 2010, which reached number 3 on the country charts and further solidified her position as a legitimate country artist rather than just a temporary crossover experiment. She dated Sean Penn in the 92nd. In the mid-1990s, Jewel had a romantic relationship with two-time Oscar winner Sean Penn, who first discovered her music after hearing her perform on Conan O'Brien's late-night television show and was so impressed that he tracked down her phone number and called her directly to ask if she would write songs for his upcoming film projects. This unexpected connection between the young folk singer and the established Hollywood actor led to both a professional collaboration and a personal relationship that lasted for several years. The romance began in an unusual way when Penn heard Jewel's appearance on The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien and immediately recognized something special about her musical abilities. Rather than going through traditional industry channels like agents or record labels, Penn took the direct approach of calling Jewel's father in Alaska, though her dad initially didn't believe that the famous actor was actually on the phone and hung up on him the first time he called. When Penn called back and convinced Jewel's father that he was genuine, he explained that he wanted Jewel to contribute music to a film he was directing, which marked the beginning of their professional relationship. Penn's sincere belief in her musical talents was something that Jewel found deeply attractive, especially since she was still struggling to gain recognition and respect in the entertainment industry at that time in her career. Their relationship developed slowly, with Jewel describing Penn as a persistent and inventive suitor who took her artistic ambitions seriously in a way that felt revolutionary to her. She has mentioned that he was genuinely supportive of her music and treated her songs and lyrics with the kind of respect she had been craving from someone in the entertainment business. The relationship also provided Jewel with some interesting Hollywood experiences, including attending film premieres with Penn and meeting various industry figures. At one premiere, an agent approached Penn and suggested that he could help get Jewel some acting opportunities. But when the agent asked if she would be willing to fix her teeth for roles, Penn's reaction showed his amazement at how superficial the industry could be regarding physical appearance. She created her own psychological therapy. During her year of homelessness, Jewel was forced to develop her own psychological therapy methods to deal with severe anxiety attacks and agoraphobia when she couldn't afford professional mental health treatment, and these self-created techniques eventually became so effective that she later turned them into a comprehensive wellness platform called JewelNeverBroken.com. Her innovative approach to mental health emerged out of pure necessity, as she had no access to traditional therapy or medication while living on the streets. The mental health challenges Jewel faced during this period were intensified by the trauma and stress of homelessness itself, which created a vicious cycle where her anxiety made it harder for her to function and improve her situation, while her desperate circumstances made her anxiety even worse. She experienced crippling panic attacks and developed agoraphobia, which is a fear of being in situations where escape might be difficult or help unavailable, making it extremely challenging for her to perform at the coffee shops where she was trying to earn money. Without any formal training in psychology or access to professional help, Jewel began experimenting with different mental exercises and techniques that she created through careful observation of her own thought patterns and emotional responses. She developed methods for retraining her brain to respond differently to anxiety triggers and learned to create new mental habits that helped her manage her symptoms more effectively. Her approach focused heavily on mindfulness and self-awareness, encouraging people to become curious about their own thoughts and feelings rather than simply trying to suppress or ignore them. She discovered that by paying close attention to how her mind worked and being willing to examine her emotional patterns scientifically, she could develop practical exercises that actually changed how her body felt and how her brain responded to stressful situations. Years later, after achieving success in her music career, Jewel formalized these techniques into the Jewel Never Broken platform, which offers emotional fitness and mindfulness training to help others develop their own mental health tools. The platform reflects her belief that people can learn to observe themselves with curiosity and create positive changes in their mental well-being without necessarily requiring expensive professional treatment. She was born in Utah, not Alaska. Despite being universally known as the singer from Alaska and having her entire public identity tied to the rugged wilderness lifestyle of the last frontier state, Jewel was actually born in Payson, Utah, on May 23, 1974, and only moved to the famous Kilcher homestead in Alaska when she was a young child. After her family decided to relocate there, this surprising fact about her birthplace is often overlooked because her entire career and personal story have been so deeply connected to Alaska that most people assume she was born and raised there from the very beginning. At the time of Jewel's birth, her parents Jewel Kilcher and Nedra Carroll were living in Utah because her father was attending Brigham Young University to further his education. The family had temporarily left the Kilcher homestead in Alaska so that could pursue his studies. And it was during this period away from Alaska that Jewel and her older brother Shane were born. Her younger brother Lee was born later after the family had returned to Alaska. The Kilcher family's time in Utah was relatively brief, as they eventually decided to return to the ancestral homestead near Homer, Alaska, where had grown up and where his father, Jewel Kilcher, had originally settled after emigrating from Switzerland. Once the family moved back to Alaska when Jewel was still very young, she spent the rest of her childhood and teenage years living the off-grid lifestyle that would become such a central part of her identity and artistic persona. The fact that she was born in Utah rather than Alaska doesn't diminish the authenticity of her connection to the Alaskan wilderness, since she spent her formative years learning to live off the land, haul water, raise livestock, and survive the harsh winters that are such an integral part of the Kilcher family experience. However, it does add an interesting layer to her origin story that many fans and even casual observers of Alaska, the last frontier, might find surprising, given how completely her public image has been shaped by her Alaska upbringing. She earned $30,000 per episode on the show. When Jewel made her long-awaited appearance on Alaska, the last frontier, alongside her young son Case, she reportedly earned $30,000 per episode for her participation in the Discovery Channel series, which provided a significant boost to her already impressive estimated net worth of $30 million. This substantial per-episode payment reflected both her celebrity status as a Grammy-nominated recording artist and the major ratings boost that her appearance brought to the family's reality television show. Jewel's decision to appear on the show was particularly significant because she had stayed away from the series for many years, despite it featuring her father and other members of the Kilcher family since its premiere in 2011. Her absence from the show had been notable to fans who knew about her connection to the homestead and were curious to see how the famous singer would interact with the rustic lifestyle that her family members documented on television each week. The $30,000 per episode fee placed Jewel among the higher-paid reality television personalities and demonstrated the value that networks place on celebrity appearances that can draw additional viewers to established shows. Her compensation was significantly higher than what regular cast members of Alaska, The Last Frontier, typically earned, reflecting the star power she brought to the production and the increased media attention that accompanied her participation. The financial arrangement also made sense from a business perspective, as Jewel's episodes generated considerable buzz and likely attracted viewers who might not have otherwise watched the show, including fans of her music who were curious to see her return to her family's homestead lifestyle. Her appearance provided content for multiple episodes during the show's 6th season, giving viewers the chance to see her introducing her son to the same rugged outdoor experiences that had shaped her own childhood. The $30,000 per episode payment added to Jewel's diverse income streams, which include royalties from her 30 million album sales worldwide, concert tours, book sales, acting roles, and various business ventures, all of which have contributed to building her substantial overall net worth over the course of her multi-decade entertainment career. She performed for Pope John Paul II. At the peak of her international success, after selling over 30 million albums worldwide, Jewel's career reached such extraordinary heights that she received invitations to perform for some of the most powerful and influential figures in the world, including a special performance at the Vatican for Pope John Paul II and another prestigious appearance at the White House for President Bill Clinton. These exclusive performances represented the ultimate recognition of her artistic achievements and placed her among a very select group of entertainers who have been invited to perform for both religious and political world leaders. The invitation to perform at the Vatican was particularly meaningful and rare, as Pope John Paul II was known for being selective about the musical artists he would invite to perform in the sacred setting of the Vatican. This honor reflected not only Jewel's commercial success, but also the spiritual and emotional depth that many people found in her music, which often dealt with themes of personal growth, overcoming adversity, and finding meaning in difficult circumstances. Her performance at the White House for President Clinton was equally prestigious and demonstrated how her music had transcended typical entertainment boundaries to reach the highest levels of American political and cultural life. These types of invitations are extended only to artists who have achieved both massive popular success and a level of artistic respectability that makes them appropriate representatives of American culture on the world stage. The fact that Jewel was invited to perform for both the Pope and the President during the same period of her career shows just how remarkable her rise from homelessness to international stardom really was. These performances took place during the late 1990s, when she was at the absolute pinnacle of her fame and influence, having already released multiple platinum albums and established herself as one of the most recognizable voices in popular music. These high-profile performances also demonstrated how far she had traveled from her humble beginnings on the Kilcher homestead in Alaska, where she had grown up without running water or electricity, to performing in some of the most important and influential venues in the entire world.